So in this segment, we're going to be talking about this clip from Channel 4, which talks about the marine life deaths linked to caused by the Teeside dredging. So effectively what this is about is they're building a freeport in this area, right, in Teeside, and there was heavy industrial kind of works going on in that area. And so in the area where they're trying to build up the port, they're doing dredging, which dredging effectively means like clearing out parts for the port in order to make it straighten out and things like that. So dredging removes sediment and other materials from the bottom of a body of water, so they clear it out to help them build the port. And so the issue is that the things that they're dredging, the bits that the sediment and things like that, some of that stuff contains really polluted chemicals that have been built there, that have been there for years. And effectively what they're doing is they're putting those kind of chemicals, that dredged material, into the water. And what that means is it's polluting the water in and around Teeside. And these chemicals are very dangerous, as this kind of Channel 4 documentary points out. So we'll take it from there.
Heading to sea from Whitby, James Cole has fished crab and lobster here all his life.
There's families walked away from it. My brother and his son, they sold their boat this year and have come out of the industry after a lifetime. Generations, they gave it up because they were feared that another die-off would finish us. And if we do have another die-off, it'll finish me.
So essentially, it's just a load of the kind of shellfish. The crustaceans are just dying in that area. Like, they can't fish for them. They're just dead. They're turning up on the beach dead. And that sort of fish, you can't consume that. It would make you very, very ill, potentially kill you. And that's what the issue is. On top of, obviously, these problems here, a lot of these shellfish is consumed on the continent, which obviously Brexit's played a massive impact on their kind of business as is. So that would probably play a key factor in them quitting the business as well. But this is very dangerous here. Whoever's decided to build a freeport here either hasn't done the relevant impact assessment reports, or didn't do them properly, or just didn't get them, or just ignored them.
Fishing and tourism. An economy revolving around safe, clean seawater. Instead, month after month, diebacks. Thousands of crustaceans washing up dead on the spectacular beaches of North Yorkshire.
And if you imagine you live in this area, just imagine going to the beach and just seeing this. It's absolutely terrifying.
Well, today it's razor clams. On another day it could be starfish, crabs or lobsters. What is it out there in the North Sea which is continuing to kill these creatures time and time again?
The government line is unchanged. Sea algae is the probable cause of this disaster, not chemical pollution.
We'll talk about that later in the video.
But tonight we can show how the government's Environment Agency used a photo of a totally unrelated pollution incident to try and make its case.
This one's bizarre. Really bizarre.
It was last September. Crab and lobster fisherman Stan Rennie couldn't believe what he saw at this spot in Hartlepool Harbour.
I came down to go to sea. As soon as I got to the top of the ramp, I noticed that the dock was ginger, and it was all around. It was all around. Took video, took photos. So I don't normally do. I phoned the Environment Agency pollution hotline.
To his amazement, the government's own pollution watchdog then used his photo of this unrelated dust spillage in one of their reports.
After various levels of management and the complaints procedure, they got back to say that it wasn't red algae, it was actually scrap dust pollution. So they'd put scrap dust pollution in both of their reports to justify and push the theory of red algae.
So you can see that the DEF agency it seems like it's blatantly lying, or at least the Environmental Agency, the relevant parties are just lying about the causes of this stuff. The diebacks and all these other problems with pollution in the water, just because they can, because they don't think anyone's going to bother to fact check them.
The Environment Department, DEFRA, told us it categorically did not use Stan's photo to bolster its case. But as you can see, here's their Environment Agency report seemingly doing just that.
I mean, they've obviously used that picture to try and deceive people. It's ridiculous.
Fishermen, campaigners and scientists say the prime suspect killing crustaceans is likely to be pyridine, a toxic byproduct of generations of Teeside steel and chemical industries. Trouble is, no in-depth research of pyridine here existed. But in recent days,
It's probably because they didn't expect. It's only become a big problem because of the dredging, and so if they didn't do the dredging, they wouldn't need these studies as such, because it wasn't an issue before. But now that they've started, construction on this port, that's where you're running into problems.
all that has changed.
It's almost an instantaneous, violent response. You're seeing them being really aggressive to the point, and the best way I can describe this is the crab doing somersaults in the tank.
Pyridine is introduced to a crab as part of new research.
And then they end up on their back, and then within 6 hours they're dead.
And you can see that's why these crabs are just turning up on the beaches dead, because within 6 hours of this chemical being introduced to them, consuming it, that's it, they're dead. They have a violent reaction and they're dead. And that's why you're having massive kind of swathes of just these kind of crustaceans, these kind of fish just appearing on the beaches. And they kind of explain why it's an issue as well, like what's actually happening with this chemical.
This new scientific research from Newcastle, York and Hull universities says the government's algae theory doesn't stack up.
In my view, it's an almost untenable position to take. And the amount of evidence that's building up, the fact that we can measure pyridine here, the fact that we know how it's going to move down the coast, the fact that we know how it poisons the crabs, and the timings all match up.
None of which we knew before.
None of which we knew before, to be fair, but we know it now.
And their computer modelling shows that if dredgers dump sediment offshore from the River Tees, pyridine in it doesn't sink. It travels rapidly along the coastal fishery. DEFRA insists it's done extensive research and algae, not chemical pollution, remains the likely cause. But it says it will study this new research carefully.
I guess these universities must be part of the anti-growth coalition, huh? Because evidently they're against this freeport because of the dredging they're doing in the River Tees.
So is dredging, excavating the Tees to keep it open for shipping, the primary reason sea life is dying? Back in the spring, DEFRA stated,
samples of dredged material must meet the highest international standards protecting marine life before it is permitted to be disposed of at sea. If samples analysed for contaminants do not meet the standards, the disposal to sea of that material will not be licensed.
So they're saying they have to meet certain criteria to dump the sediments into the ocean. If they don't meet certain criteria, they'd have to be disposed of in a different way. But as always, the geniuses at DEFRA may not be telling the truth here.
but tonight we can show that DEFRA sometimes sets aside pollution standards here. One of the dredgers the company PD Ports uses on the river. Channel 4 News has obtained a routine licensing document issued to the company by CFAS, part of DEFRA, on December the 20th. The document finds the toxic levels in routine dredge samples sometimes exceed what's allowed to be dumped at sea.
Viewed in isolation, these results would preclude material from continued disposal at sea. However, the Tees has a documented history of specific industrial activity which has led to a noticeable presence of man-made contaminants.
And I think if they did the proper impact assessment reports, they would know this, but the problem is the government are hiding behind the fact that you need to dump the sediment in the ocean, right, into the further waterways, it has to meet certain criteria. So if the government stick by that statement, it will kind of protect them, but the issue is that they're not standing by their own criteria, as in this, do as I say, not as I do, effectively. And that's what the more science and the more research goes into this, the more the scientists will point out the government's failings here and this company's failings. The problem is, by that time, it's already too late, because it's too late now. That's the main problem. You've got a lot of fish just turning up on the beach dead. Or crustaceans.
It then concludes,
considering the local context of the Tees, the results do not preclude material from continued disposal at sea.
So despite the fact that they know this, this material is potentially very toxic, it doesn't mean that, it's going to stop them from doing this.
there you have it in black and white. When it comes to dumping filth at sea from the Tees, the pollution watchdog appears to waive the guidelines.
And this kind of I don't know if it's CFAS, but the Environmental Agency, we've mentioned that they've dropped the ball multiple times here when it comes to making sure England's waterways are clear, and this is just further to that how bad a job they're doing.
DEFRA doesn't deny this happened, but says because pollution levels were declining, this was allowable and it was not breaking the rules. The dredging company, PD Ports, does not deny it happened either, but says it relies on regulators to decide what can be dumped at sea and operates entirely within the regulatory framework.
We've had 24 porpoises now have washed up dead this year.
Former police officer turned SEAL rescue volunteer Sally Bunce.
You kind of think, what's the point in having all this legislation in place if we're going to set it aside? I've been astounded, actually, absolutely astounded, and I've completely lost faith now in those who are in a position of protecting our marine environment. I have no faith whatsoever in their ability to do so.
And this is someone who lives there, you know, someone who sees this stuff. This video does go on to talk about the council. The local council is objecting to this freeport, even though it apparently, you know, give loads, you know, it kind of generate loads of income for the local economy, which really it won't do, because freeports in themselves are like their own kind of mini kind of city state, in a sense of they can have their own rules and things like that. It doesn't really help the people out in the broader area. Just kind of further to this, if we look at where the Tees is, right, if we look at this area, you can see this is where they're doing the dredging, right, Whitby. And so if you look at how kind of far it can go, the chemical's got a long way to go north and south, right? It can go straight into Hartlepool, into these areas, which is, you know, other fishing areas. Hartlepool's another one. But I don't know how far it could go in terms of into the bigger ocean, you know, out here. Could it affect, you know, Dutch fishermen? Could it affect, you know, Denmark's fishermen? Could it affect even Belgium or France? You know, how far does this stuff go? Because they were saying it travels very fast. So I'd be kind of interested to know how far this stuff can actually go. And in terms of this story, you know, they've been talking about this stuff for months, since the start of the year. So for the government to deny it, it's kind of crazy when you got the Guardian talking about it all the way back in February. So these people actually have no excuse here. But there's a bit more in the video. I think it's worth watching if you want to watch it in your own time. I'll leave a link in the description as always. But anyways, let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Support the channel on Patreon if you can. And hopefully I'll see you in the next one.